Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ron Weiner podcast. This is the place where we explore all the questions of existence. Why are we here? What are we here for? All of that good jazz. If this is something that interests you, please hit the like button and go ahead and subscribe. It's how, algorithms like YouTube know that we're here. And today I'm very excited. We have a guest on, Mr. Tim Freak. Tim is a philosopher and author who has authored more than 35 different books, one of whom I was just telling him I didn't even realize when we first started talking that I had read back in 1999 that kind of got me started on this entire thing, called The Jesus Mystery. So I suggest going and checking that out if you have a chance. But your most recent books here, in 2016 was Deep Awake, and 2017 was Soul Story. And then most recently, you started working on a new project. Instead of writing another book, you started doing a pod book, which is very, very interesting. So there's about 6 segments to that out right now, and I'm going to have the link to all of that down below. So I want everybody to go and check that out. But Tim, if you want to take it from there and just let us, this is your stage. You teach us what you think, what we should know.
Well, thank you for that, Ryan. So, yeah, a pod book. What the hell's that? It's the love child, in my mind, the love child between a book and a podcast. So, as you said, I've written 35 books and I wanted to do something new. So I thought, let me take the content that I would normally put in a book with all of the structure. So one idea, you need to get this idea, and then you can get this idea, and then you can get this idea, so that it's not just speaking; it's
Yeah.
absolutely structured. But make it each chapter like a podcast. So I'm able to express those ideas like I am with you now, because there's something so nice about this. Because anyone listening to this gets to see me as well as the ideas. And I like that. I like the idea that we can see an author as a human being, because I very much feel like, you know, you and I are both facing the same mystery of existence. But you and I are both facing death. You and I are both going, what does this mean, this experience we're having? And keeping that humanity, which you can lose behind the printed page. So I thought, okay, I'll do a pod book. And this pod book it's called Why Your Life Really Matters. I mean, it's a book of deep philosophy, but I gave it that title because for me, deep ideas change your experience of living. So they're not abstract things. They're absolutely fundamental to how you experience this and how you choose to live. And so what I'm doing is I'm exploring a continuation of my last book, Soul Story, which was a long time ago, 8 years more. So that during that whole period, I've literally been working just about every day to enlarge the ideas and put across what is, I hope, a comprehensive philosophy, a comprehensive way of understanding this in a rational, reasonable, robust way, which helps us understand spirituality in a new way. And that's my aim. I've written on so many different traditions, all of them probably, nearly all, drawing out their similarities and their differences. And this last phase of my life has been about, well, okay, so spirituality has evolved. Where's it going next? And the hypothesis that underlies the pod book is, I think the new form of spirituality will be a form it could not take before the scientific revolution. This is a post-scientific revolution spirituality. And in particular, this idea that we've had for 100 years, that the universe is a process of evolution. So it's an evolutionary spirituality. And my central hypothesis, I'll just give you this and then we can go wherever you want with it. The underlying big idea, which is so simple, it's really captured my imagination, is what if everything is one process of emergence, one process of becoming? Because what I experience every moment is something new based on what went before.
Right.
Well, what if that's what existence is? And what if everything, literally everything that has any form whatsoever, is part of this one process of forming? So that spirituality isn't supernatural, isn't a different thing to the material world. It's actually the most emergent level of one process that has given us the material world, the biological world, and then the psyche. Psyche is Greek for soul. It's given us this domain of the soul, which is what spirituality explores. And what I'm saying is, let's not do as is commonly done. Let's not reduce the psyche to just biology. It isn't. It's a whole domain which shamans and mystics and explorers have been exploring for hundreds of years. We just need to understand it in a new way. And that's what I'm trying to offer. And because I can do it as a pod book, literally anyone listening to this can go out to their podcast provider or on YouTube, and I can make it free. I can just say,
Yeah.
here it is. This is what I want to share. Is it any of use to you?
That's fantastic. And I think it's definitely of use to everybody out there. Yeah, these are really great. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order, kind of in the questions I had here with the different chapters in the book. So the latest one, and this is what I was listening to just before this, is what is consciousness? What
Yep.
is the psyche? What is emotion? And in there, there's a part where we're talking about, and if all those things are related just to us having our human brain, then what about, what you bring up with plants? Plants are somehow able to move towards light. You have fungus that underlies in a forest that signals trees all the way over here, that trees all the way over here are being cut down. This is just stuff we're starting to understand, and there's no neural network, yet these things seem to be behaving in a manner that seems to give them some form of conscious thought.
I don't think it's conscious thought. And I don't think it's thought.
Hmm.
What I do think, though, is that it's very clear, as you say, that plants learn. So learning is not to do with having a neural system. You can slime molds learn and act on that knowledge. So what's that about? And my suggestion is the whole universe has been learning the whole time. That's what the universe does. And that what we call learning, what we do consciously, is an evolutionary form of something which is fundamental to the universe. So what I'm suggesting is that a metaphor, it's all it is to think of the universe like an AI system. So it's learning how to be matter. It's learning how to be a cell. And it's setting up what I call passivity. So the past starts to condition what is possible in the future. So there's not strict laws of nature, but rather the information that forms the past conditions what happens next in such a way that the universe, when it started, knew how to be hydrogen, and that was pretty much it. But it then worked out, and I don't mean it thought about it or it's conscious, it just the
Right.
process itself, like an AI is not conscious, it just does it. That we can see that patterns take shape and then they tend to repeat, but always, and this is key, in a creative way. Then each moment is the moment before in a new way, and it never repeats. So that process of repetition and creativity is what gives rise to everything. So when you're dealing with those fungi and the trees and the slime molds, you're seeing that on a very high level. Once you get to the level where we are actually conscious, now you're seeing it on a really huge level. Once you see it like we're doing it, where I may say something and you learn something
Mhm.
from it, or vice versa, now you're on a whole different ballpark. But it didn't come from nowhere. It came from what was there before.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that. And I guess the plant being conscious, that kind of isn't kind of now where I was going for with that, because it obviously it doesn't think like you and I. Um, there are some different particular religions out there had the form of animism was kind of their
Mhm.
their take on it. They said, even the rock is animate. It's not like you and me. It doesn't think. It doesn't have a mind or a soul, but it's a part of God because it's a part of consciousness because it's here. It exists. Therefore, it's a part of the total whole of whatever is out there, kind of. Um, which I always find really interesting. I know, people argue whether animals, have emotions or how much are they able to think or not. Well, they definitely are able to think of something, but no, I don't think they're questioning what is my existence, why am I a dog or a cat or anything along those lines. But the information that they're taking in adds to the total sum of the consciousness knowing what it is and kind of exploring that. There's a particular view that some different spiritual philosophers have had, and I wonder what your take on this would be, that the idea of, and we'll go into the next question I have is one of those, what have we completely misunderstood about God? And that's sort of a concept there. Um, actually, let's go with that one there, Liz. If you want to talk about that, what have we misunderstood about God, and what's the way that we're sort of mistaking what we should be seeing?
Okay, lots of questions, and
I
they're
know.
good
Yeah.
questions.
Sorry.
They're all big questions, and that's because that's my fault, because that's what the pod book deals with every chapter, and there's going to be a lot of chapters. We've only
Oh
just
yeah.
started.
Yeah.
Is dealing with a big question. So, okay, let me just pick up the end bit about the stuff about consciousness for a moment, and then I'll relate it to God. So animism, as you said, is an early form of understanding, which is, I think, the way to see the evolution of human understanding is that people can only think with the ideas they have. And we have a huge amount more ideas than our ancestors, which enables us to think better because we've come after. That's all it is.
Mhm.
And if you go back and back and back, there's fewer ideas. So it's more likely that the things which are in your experience will be projected on the world. So there's the idea that things are also like you. They're conscious, or they're able to, they have psyche. A rock, I mean, we'd look at a rock today and go, well, how could that possibly be true? Because a rock it's not even an autonomous system. You split it in two, do you get, when you say the rock has a spirit, if you split it in two, it's now got two spirits. I mean, how does that work? These ideas we've moved beyond them. But I think what it's pointing to is that each, especially autonomous system, is a passivity system, if you will. It has an intelligence. It's learned how to be like that, but it's not conscious and it's not thinking. All of that's going to come much, much later. And what we do is we project that back because we experience it, and therefore we project it back. A bit like if you go back far enough, you get this common idea, well, the earth is a mother, the sky's like a father. Well, if you've only got a handful of ideas, like
Right.
mother and father, what else are you going to think in terms of? You hear the thunder, how can you understand that? You're not going to go straight to electromagnetism.
Hmm.
You're going to go to, there's a big man hitting something
Right.
and he sounds angry. That's perfectly understandable, and that's how our understanding evolves. So, God, I think, is the same.
Yeah.
People have this experience. I've had this experience since I was very young of connecting with something utterly benign, beautiful, loving, wise, something which is traditionally called God. It's given that name. And the idea, I think, when you experience it, it's incredibly real. And it leads, quite naturally, in the past, it's led people to go, oh, this must be the big mind that created the universe. And I completely understand why people should think that. But I'm not sure it's right. And I've wrestled philosophically with, there's a lot to say, but let's reduce it to two key problems with that idea. There's a traditional problem which has been discussed for hundreds and hundreds of years that often gets called the problem of evil, which really is the problem of suffering.
Hmm.
It's why, if you experience this God of love and it feels so immense and compassionate, and they created this world, why is this world predicated on so much horror? And you can go, well, you need dark to have light and all of that stuff as long as you want. But to me, when I see a child or animal, anything,
Hmm.
suffering horrendously for what? It's like, why would you? This is not good. It doesn't fit with my experience of a loving God. And that's a major impulse towards modern atheism, that it just feels incoherent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the other impulse which has come in is what I call the problem of absurdity, which is we now know a lot about how the universe has evolved. So we know there's been 5 complete extinctions, for example. Well, what sort of God doesn't know what they're doing that they have to have 5 complete extinctions?
Right.
250 million years of dinosaurs. What's that about? So this God, if the God is at the beginning, he is mad and mean, not loving and wise. So that's why that God has been rejected by so many people. However, for me, as someone who's explored spirituality all his life, I experience this, and it's the most real thing I know. And where I've ended up, and it was a big moment for me, Ryan, some time ago now, of going, oh, What if that big mind is not at the beginning, but is rather the most emergent level of the process of evolution? So that what's at the beginning is the simplest thing you can imagine, the one as two, as in Taoism. The one is yin and yang, all of the
Mhm.
really simple, no big minds, no love, no intentions, nothing, just like maths, like the one, the undifferentiated, the void, as the Buddhists say. And that has become differentiated as everything. And it has led to, we know, psyche or soul, which we're both experiencing now, this non-material realm of the imaginal. What if that has evolved further and our little minds have begun to coalesce into a big mind, which is what we experience as traditionally called God, and why it is so wise, and why it brings out the best in me, because it's the most emergent level. Why it feels so real, because it's the most emergent level. So that rather than God being outside of the process of becoming, to go back to the idea I started with, everything I'm suggesting is part of this one process of becoming, including God. And God is the most emergent level so far. And we can touch that and more. I think one of the reasons our lives really matter is we play a role in the emergence of God, if we use that word, that big mind. So that it's like a gentleman in Japan when I was there called it a Copernican shift. You like Copernicus said, "Oh no,
Yeah.
no, the Earth's not the center of the universe; the sun is." It's a bit like
Right.
that. It's going, no, this doesn't come from a God who's outside, but the universe is flowering into God. If we use a poetic image.
I liked it a lot. It goes very much in line with this sort of thing that I've seen happening is I just there's some kind of like an awakening going on. I just feel like is happening. People are catching on to this. Um, a lot of it having to do even with people I know that have been very fundamentalist mainstream Christians, or even seeing mainstream Christian TV shows on the internet here, where now they've started having near-death experience people on who have said, "Oh yeah, I went over and no, I wasn't greeted by the pearly gates. I met a bunch of family members and this and that, and it was this whole evolution." A lot of times what they kind of come back and say is that their understanding of things is that existence, everything we can think of here is a practice of, like you said, evolution, of going from God evolving by figuring out what God is, by figuring out all of these different possibilities. It's sort of like something trying to figure out what it is by evolving into something else was one of the principles that they had kind of talked about. But moreover than that, it also reminds me of the concept of moving from the personal God. So in the Old Testament, you have a personal God. Well, I'll just say Hashem as opposed to using the YHWH. But you have this person who gives rules, tells you to go to war, bring back the spoils of war for me. This is the way men talk to each other and do things. It doesn't seem very divine to me. I was thinking about it. Then around 19, around the same time that I was getting into things, I started understanding Kabbalah. That if you were a rabbinical Jew and you got into the age of 35 or 40, you were a scholar on the Torah, you were allowed to join Kabbalah now, where you learned about the concept of Ein Sof, or the big mind, the unknowable, unfathomable. Don't try to figure it out because your brain's not going to be able to handle it concept of God. That has to be narrowed down for humans to be able to have this understanding that they've had in the past. And it seems to me that we're moving away from that idea of God being a judge that says you're good or bad to being something much larger that we are all a part of.
Yes, I think I've been very influenced by Kabbalah and Christianity, Gnosticism, which are very similar. Um, Here's how it's worked for me. So I think the God of what the Christians call the Old Testament, Tanakh, is a tribal god. It's a thunder god. Everyone had one. Everyone had their own personal
Right.
god, and he's jealous of other gods. And that is very much part of that thing we were talking earlier. If you've got a handful of ideas, you get the feeling that there's a force looking after you. It represents your tribe, and you try and serve it. And what the revolution that happens, which we call Christianity, the book you mentioned, the Jesus Mysteries, is about this, is that a group of Gnostic Jews who are clearly very influenced by the pagan mysteries, go, that's not the real God. The real God is a God of love. And that's the God we now get, replaces an eye for an eye with love your enemies.
Right.
And this whole other image. And now what's so interesting, and it shows how human beings, how we evolve. They couldn't just go, look, that God doesn't exist. That was impossible to say. They couldn't think that, but they could think that's a fallen, it's almost like a devil. It's a false God that's come from the real God. So the real God has emanated out into all of these things, and it's fallen into this world, and this world's so bad because it's created by the false God. And we need to get free and get back to the God of love. Now, that's quite similar to, I think what happens around that time is that Jewish Gnosticism will develop into Christianity and into Cabala. And they're both really coming from Pythagoreanism.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is very much in that Gnostic spirit. So they came along and they went, no, turn it upside down. That's not right. It's something else. And I want to come along and go, don't stop, keep going. Because what I'm saying is, yeah, you're right. That the God is the God of love. It's just not outside. We haven't fallen from it. We're evolving into it. And it is not and this is not a fallen place. This is somewhere which is growing into something greater. And we are like that. We're not fallen. We're not trapped. We're actually part of a process that is now growing beyond the things we want, the suffering. The God's relationship, if we use that word, we don't need to use that word, of course, we could use a different one, but if we do, that the relationship of God is very much like yours and mine relationship. We look at the suffering, and it's like, oh, at our best, we want to make it better. Well, what I find with coming into that big love, which is divine, is it's like that, but on, turned up to 11. It's that, the most of that I ever experience. And the idea that it's a very positive idea. Most of spirituality in the past, nearly all of it, has seen the world as a fallen place.
Yes.
There's a perfect place somewhere else that's supernatural, above the natural world. And we've fallen into this. And this is a degenerate place. What I'm suggesting is that we can now turn that around because we understand evolution, which they didn't. They had no idea. They thought the universe was a given, something created as it is, bang. Not something which has evolved. So if we can look back now and go, hang on, it looks pretty damn certain right now that 13.8 billion years ago, the universe contained hydrogen and a bit of helium. It was a gas. Now look at it. Now it's you and me having a conversation. That's a hell of a journey. Now, if you get that vision and it makes sense and you can say, oh yeah, it's just emerged, then the idea that this is a positive thing leading to, for all of the problems we have as human beings and all the suffering in the world, that things are moving in a more emergent direction. And that there may be the possibility that just as we talked about slime molds earlier, slime molds are single cells. They work together collectively, but they're single cells. But somehow in the evolutionary process, single cells have become something as multicellular and as vastly complex as your body. Trillions and trillions of them all working together to form something greater, much, much greater than a single cell. And my speculation, the thing that I'm exploring is, has something like that happened again? We know it keeps happening. It's happened in physics. It's happened in biology. Has it happened on the level of psyche and soul? Which means that rather than psyches and souls being in relationship, which they clearly are, actually they can come into communion, and that a multi-soul system can form like a multicellular system can form, and that therefore our souls are forming a super soul. Our minds are forming a big mind. Not all, of course, only those that can come into communion. And that gives this quality of wisdom, it's a super intelligence. It's a super loving intelligence because it's drawing the very best of what's come before.
Yeah. That is an excellent way of looking at it. Something that I know you have worked with Ken Wilber in the past. If anybody doesn't know Ken, his work is about integral philosophy and ways of looking at things. And in my way, that what I took from it was that you have a lot of different factors going into all these different things that are happening upon this evolutionary track that we're kind of on. And something else I've noticed with this, number one, what you were talking about with souls coming into a sort of group consciousness or alignment. I think that's a concept that's very hard for people that are very ego driven to understand. How can I retain, how am I still me? When people channel these sorts of things, or say, I'm channeling this being that's multi personalities in one, it's just a concept people can't understand because they're so locked into me, my needs, what I want, what I think is right and wrong, here's the way it should be. And then you meet other different people, like yourself or like myself, other people that say, well, that sounds really interesting. For some reason, that concept just seems very natural to me. This seems like the natural evolution and progress. And what I would kind of compare to what I see worldwide, I work with some different political rights groups outside of here and stuff. But us having this conversation, for example, the person I spoke to yesterday was in Greece. The person I spoke to before that was in Russia the day before. These are not this would not have been happening 15 years ago. This channel
Absolutely.
wouldn't have been happening 15 years ago. And there's a sort of, you see people clinging to old ways. Like you said, not everybody's going to see this a certain way. You have some people that are going to cling to very old ways. They want their personal God that tells them it's going to be okay. Here's to go to war. Here's the good guy. Here's the bad guy. You live in America and you live in the state of Illinois, and that's your home. That's your nationalist type of way of looking at things. Or I look at myself as one guy living on the planet with a bunch of other different people. These lines of nationalism are breaking down. We all talk to each other in different countries. We watch news in different countries. So on the human scale, I see us doing what I think is also happening on a psyche and a sort of a consciousness scale. Do you see that kind of thing, same sort of thing happening with?
Yes. And I part of the thesis that underlies the pod book that we've been discussing is that everything evolves. Our understanding will evolve. There will be a whole new paradigm shift because the last one was the scientific revolution. We could say in our culture before that was the Christian revolution. There's paradigm shifts. They happen. There will be another one. It seems indisputable. The question is, what will it be and when will it come? And what I am putting forward is, I think it could be this. And then with that comes a new type of human being. There's a philosopher whose name I can't quite find. Jan, I'm not going to find his name. Who talks about the Flintstone fallacy, which is the idea that people in the past were like us. Like the Flintstones. They're a modern Stone Age family. Well,
Right.
Stone Age people weren't like us. They were very different, biologically not that dissimilar, but in terms of their ideation, and the way they lived and what they imagined the world to be, utterly different. And so we can get that human beings have evolved, not just ideas. So that the birth of the modern individual, maybe 400, 500 years ago, it's really taken off, has given us this world. The scientific revolution was really about the birth of a modern individual who could think for themselves. So we didn't all think the same. Now what's happening, this is it right now on the internet, you and I, is the diversity of thought is now overwhelming. It's amazing. And that has led to all these change. So what I want to suggest is that there will be a new human being. And I think the way that it looks to me is a movement between the individual, which I celebrate, and what I call the unividual, which is the individual now conscious, or becoming conscious, let's say, of the fact that the universe is a one. And that's the great mystical insight of awakening, where you go, oh, it's one. It's also what brings you into communion with God. Oh, I am Tim, but I'm the universe, which has evolved to be Tim, relating to the universe that's evolved to be everything else. And there's also one of us. And you and I are individuals, but we're also one. And it's that shift. And that shift brings this enormous love with it because you feel connected to everything and everyone. And mystics have been exploring that for a very long time. And what I want to do is go, okay, let's understand that differently now. And then we can support this arising of the unividual. And then actually there's one more thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to it. I don't want to just talk. I want to hear you speak too. But
So I'm writing
the
notes as you're going to my questions here. That's
oh,
what I'm
good,
doing.
yeah,
Yeah.
great, great. The to just take that back to God, to tie it all together as best we can. There's a common idea in spirituality that we have fallen from the oneness. We got lost in the Maya, and we need to. And the thing which keeps us separate is our idea of our individuality, and that's a bad thing in us. And we need to get rid of that, and we return to the one like a drop into the ocean, which sounds very attractive if you don't think about it too much. I used to like it. Sounding, oh yeah, that sounds nice. But it also means that your individuality, your struggles, your loves, your everything you've done, your relation, is all for nothing. Because really, you just got to get rid of it and get back to the one. I want to turn that on its head and go, no, the evolution of you as a unique individual is it.
Hmm?
That's what the universe has been moving towards. You as an individual, someone who can think, someone who can ideate, someone who can question, someone who can explore, everything that makes you you. Passions, feeling, all of it that makes you a human being is not an error. It's not the thing to get rid of. It's the thing, it's the foundation from which you now step to the unividual, so that the individual is conscious of the unity. And to tie that back into God, I'm not saying the individual dissolves into the supersoul. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying, think of the biological level. Here's my body, this multicellular complex thing. What's the difference between me and a big lump of slime mold? It's that in a slime mold, all the cells are the same.
Yeah.
Here in my body, they're all doing something different, which is why it works as a completely higher level organism.
System.
I think it's the same with the supersoul, that what we bring to it is our individuality, and that what we're doing with our lives is actually developing that individuality to contribute to this higher level, which is God, the supersoul. So it's a complete flip in relation of the individual. It goes, no, individual, wonderful. Find your individuality, evolve it, be the best individual you can possibly be, and make that transition to a unividual, which is seeing a deeper level of reality, that it's all one. And that brings you into communion with others who are doing that. And that is this super soul. And what you offer to it is not to dissolve into it, but to actually contribute to it, your self, your individuality.
Absolutely. That's great. Something you brought up, this popped into my head when we were talking about, older humans that were physically, probably like us, very similar up to a certain point back. People always talk about having a time machine and what they would do and go back and observe. The crucifixion or something else that they're. No, I'll tell you what I want. I would love to go back in time and find the first humans who had a complex conversation with each other, because at some point humans were going, kill, fish, rock. It was, they had that archaic type of communication. Then at some point in time, and I don't know if anybody's really been able to figure this out. I've looked it up before, but who were the people who developed the first language where they could have a conversation somewhat like this, where somebody could say, why are we here? Hey, what do you think you're made of? What is this rock made of? Because that had to happen at some point. People didn't do that, and then somehow they did start doing it. And I feel like that's sort of this evolutionary point or step that gets kind of glanced over, because we go, well, they started talking, and then we go to Samaria and they built ziggurats, and we're done. They were hunting and farming up until that point. No, something else happened in between there where people were beginning to be able to relay complex different thoughts to one another. And I think, and to me, that sort of kicked off going from this animal state to the human state that we're in, is when we could start we had a brain that we could start training to do these different things, to be able to actually speak to each other and begin exploring what are we doing down here, while other things on other planets probably may be doing the exact same thing. We have no idea what else is out there. There could be other different civilizations of humans that look like us that are literally at 10,000 BC on some other planet somewhere doing the same stuff we did 50,000 years ago. I find it really interesting in there. But I have this is a question that popped in here. You mentioned the double or the triple slit effect earlier. We're talking about that. And so for some people who don't know this, I would suggest going up, just pause this, go look up the triple slit effect or the double slit effect in electrons and see what that has to say. But in essence, um, when you try to shoot electrons at this piece of paper with two slits in it, the electrons should line up here and should line up there where the holes are. And when they have a device on measuring this, that's exactly what happens. But when you turn the device off and walk away from it, you find that the particles don't shoot through as electrons; they plaster the entire thing, and they come through as a waveform. And so some people in the quantum mechanics community have said, okay, so if that's pretty much what's happening, is that particles are a waveform until the probability collapses into the actual structure or the point. Who was the first observer to take the quantum energy and observe it into particles after the Big Bang or at some point back in history? And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that idea and thoughts on the concept.
Well, first of all, I just love your stuff. Absolutely adore what you said about
Right.
trying to work out where the first conversation. I have fantasies and thoughts like that all the time. Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Wouldn't that be fascinating? When was it? I mean, and as you say, we don't know because there's no record. But some point, people started having that conversation. At some point, people realized I have ideas.
Mhm.
Rather than just using them, they could recognize. So all of that and the ability to reflect would develop. One of the things which fascinates me, we take for granted, is the ability to think, which is essentially imagining talking to yourself.
Yeah.
And we just take that for granted. One of the stories I love is a description of the a library in Alexandria and how noisy it was because everyone was reading out loud because people hadn't learned how to read to themselves, which is, we take it for granted, don't we? Your kids read out loud and then they learn to speak. So all of these things happen for the first time, and we're still in that. We're doing it now. We're kind of moving on. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah.
But you also went on to something very, very interesting. Remind me what that was, because I got distracted by Alexandria.
Yeah.
Was
So the concept of, so if we're dealing with probability or waves of
oh
probability,
yes, the double
infinite
slit experiment.
energy, yes, and then it
Yes,
condenses in the particle
yes,
pops into existence out of nowhere
yes,
because we
yes,
looked at it.
yes. So I think what we're seeing here is something very interesting, which is that the when we the quantum level of reality, uh, I think, is understood now, and I would agree with this as a mathematical, really, an informational level. For some time now, physicists have talked about, look, it's not a material world, it's an informational world, and what that means to me, but what I mean by information is the differentiation of oneness. So every differentiation is a form of information. So everything is a form of information. What's emerged and evolved is information. And it's but not reducible. It's not going, well, it's really just information. No, that's its foundation, and then it's evolved into something more and more and more until here it is having a conversation. And what you see with the quantum level is that it's not really in space, and it's a probability. As you said, a probability wave is a mathematical entity, and it's not information in anything.
Hmm?
It's not like in a computer or the waves in the air. It's just information, and this information will behave in certain ways depending on its relationship with other things. Now, there's a common idea in spirituality that this has got something to do with a conscious observer. And I really don't think that's the case. It's a minority view amongst physicists. Not that that
Hmm.
means it's wrong. Some do think that. It was explored some time ago as a possibility for various reasons, which probably would be too much to go into here, and was rejected as kind of incoherent, I think, eventually, and I think it is. But what has remained, and this is hugely important for physicists I admire, is that it shows relationality, that what exists depends on what it's in relationship with. And that what we're seeing is that a quantum possibility in itself is a wave. It can appear anywhere. And you get wave interference, like you said. You fire an electron through, but it's more like a water wave that then interferes with itself. Whereas if you measure it, it's interacting with something that measures it. So now it's got a relationship with something. And so once that possibility comes into a relationship with something that is definite, that is matter, it becomes matter. And I think that's relationality, that everything, it's like I'm experiencing this room. I think the way I'm experiencing my room is the way the room is for me. If there was a fly in here, it'd be a different room. If there was a bat, it'd be a different room. It's the same room, but in relationship to the different system. And what you're seeing is that goes right the way back to the beginning. And that for me goes, oh, interesting, because what's the most basic piece of information? It's a bit, this or that. One piece of information is this or that. Well, that's yin and yang. Hang on, or the Kabbalah.
Yeah.
That's the one as two. These ancient mystical traditions, that's the idea. That's the most basic bit of information, and that's going to ripple its way up. And what you're seeing with the double slit experiment is we're beginning to try and question and understand, how does it move from something which is non-material information, non-spatial, to something which is material information in space. And it looks like it's to do with relationality. But that would suggest that everything is relationality. Everything is the one in relationship with itself in all these different ways. Kind of, what else could it be?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a oneness to being, and it's become everything, and it's in relationship with itself in all these different ways. That's what we're in.
Yeah, no doubt. I love it. It's kind of a random question here, because it goes into, what people have known in the past here. I'm going to make a guess. Maybe you have read the Cabalian or been exposed to it all. How has that, the different principles in that, it's another book. Go look it up, guys, if you haven't read it yet, the Cabalian. I'll put a link to it below. But especially one of the principles, of the Cabalian being as old as it is, where we don't really even know, I don't think, who wrote it originally. Hermes Trismegistus, or the Thrice Great. But, one of the principles in there talks about is how everything is made from smaller parts. It's almost like somebody back then understood what molecules and atoms were. Do you think that that is that in the past we've had, we'll call it maybe downloads or transmissions of information like that to certain individuals who were able to put this out, not necessarily as prophecy, but sort of just an understanding that they got from the cloud, if you will, that they were able to then share and express with others?
I think there's always been individuals who've been particularly interested in those conversations that you mentioned. I think the works attributed to Hermes are sort of the same right time as the Gnostics, really.
Yeah.
They're like the pagan Gnosticism, and I don't think they're by someone called Hermes. They're like all of those texts. They're written by people who are putting it into the mouth of the great Thoth, is the other name for Hermes in the Egyptian. And I think they're building on ideas that are around. Democritus had developed in Greece the idea of the atom, which is the atom means the etymology is undivided, the undivided. So you've got this idea of you can divide everything, but eventually you must get down to something you can't divide, and that would be the atom. And that idea develops. You can see it in the ideas you're talking about, and then it will resurface a long time later in science and go, oh, look, there must be an atom. And then we found out you could divide the atom. It's like, oh, okay, that's not the atom then. And then we're going down, and it goes, oh, it looks like the atom is a piece of information. That's the undividable. It becomes something which is, the bit is more like the atom. I mean, interestingly, that we talk about the Big Bang, but the Big Bang was a insult word. The guy, the Georges Lemaitre, who came up with this amazing theory, who was a priest actually and very spiritual man, he called it the primeval atom. So it's the idea that it starts from the primeval atom, which is the undivided, and then divides. Very similar to what I'm saying, really, or I should say the other way around. What I'm saying is obviously been influenced by him, and so it's that idea of something you eventually get down to. So I think what's happening with things like the works of Hermes is people are looking at life in a deep way, and they are gleaning what they can and using the language and ideas they've got available to express it, exactly like you are now and like I am now. It's just that what we've got available to us has gone through the roof. So one way, just to tie that in, which really strikes me when I look at what I'm doing, so I think, oh, it's interesting. I've been born into a time when at the beginning of my life, for the first time ever, I could go into a bookshop as a teenager and get any spiritual text, or at least order it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, as an old man, I live in a world where I can get it instantly on my phone, find the passage I'm looking for,
Right.
compare it across to other. It's like, oh, wow. And what I've done with my particular little adventure is to write about all these different traditions, about where they're similar a lot and where they're different. And then here I am at the end of my life. And what I've articulated, if you like, one of the ways of seeing it is going, at the beginning, I see it very much like the Cabala, different because it's evolutionary, but or Taoism, it's the one. It's not God, it's not a mind, it's the one.
Source.
And the one has become two. Yes, but it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's literally nothing. It's the undivided. It's
Right.
the formless, and the formless is forming, and it forms as the simplest thing you can imagine, something we can only study with mathematics, which will become the quantum level, which will become matter, which will become alive, which will become sentient, which will become psyche, soul, which will become God. And so what I've done is I've gone, oh, the theistic traditions and the non-theistic traditions actually become part of one thing. It's just, it's Buddhist or Taoist at the beginning, and it's Christian or those other theistic traditions. That's where it's going. And in between is science. And all of those great insights that human beings have can actually fit together into one narrative, one understanding.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's almost the way sometimes people describe us as being in sort of a kind of fractal holographic universe, that it's a fractal that you can, and with some fractals you zoom in and it's the same thing over and over as you go zooming in on it. But then at the same time, when you pull the camera back and zoom out, it's the exact same fractal in reverse and you're seeing the exact same thing over. Almost, we have an atom that turns out that goes to be a molecule, goes into a cell, the cell goes into a multicellular being. I'm one being, now I'm two, so I can talk to somebody and share thoughts. Then I'm three, then I'm four, then I'm a town, then it keeps going to this larger amount. The more you're, just like you were saying, we're exposed now. I have all this information on my phone I can get a hold of instead of having to go to the store. I've also got all this information from other people on other places of the planet that are now I'm learning about their culture and what's important to them versus what's important in my culture. And it's sort of this one homogenizing thing where, again, it's not anybody losing their individuality. We're not trying to become one group of people who all look the same. It's that we are recognizing we are all a part of the same thing, whilst individually respecting and enjoying the differences and the individualism that everybody brings to the table, sort of.
Yeah, yeah, that's it right there. That's what's been happening. And I am fundamentally optimistic because of that.
Yeah.
Now, that's not because I underestimate the incredible problems we face, and there's lots, always. But we've come this far, and one of the things I always want to make people aware of is how far we've come, because often people, it's like they think it's always been like this. Well, it really hasn't.
No.
It wasn't very long ago when most people's children just died.
Yeah.
That wasn't very long ago. And we live in a much, much better world. And I feel immense gratitude to the people that came before, people who did practical things like that, which is not something I do. And also, people who were philosophers before, who opened up possibilities, who created new ideas and passed them on so we can think with them. And then we can come up with new possibilities and pass them on to the people that will come after us. And in that way, we're emerging into something amazing. The great sad, well, the huge jump forward, which has given us all of this, is this obviously what gets called the scientific revolution, which is really the ability to free think.
Right.
And that's also what's given us the economic revolution, free thinking, entrepreneurs, try it out, be yourself, artists, the same. Suddenly we go from repetition to the artist creates new ideas, and that's launched us forward. But the price has been in the intellectual mainstream, not with most people, but the intellectual mainstream has been a rejection of the spiritual level of reality because it's associated with the old mythic understanding. I love myths, but they're not as good as science, and so that's been pushed away. So we talked about God before. Oh, God is the creator. It's nonsense. Read these books. You can see it's archaic nonsense. And I agree with all of that. But I also think spirituality has the whole time been addressing a level of reality, which is more than just a byproduct of biology. It's a domain. There's an ecology of soul, just like there's an ecology of biology. And spiritual people have been exploring since shamanic times, have been exploring that ecology of soul, and have been seeing things like you mentioned earlier, that we've that we survive the death of the body. So the question for me is, can I understand that in an evolutionary context? And I think we can. So that rather than being, again, a supernatural phenomena, that you go, oh, the ability for the psyche, this imaginal level, to survive without the biological level has evolved. Because like everything has. So it hasn't been there the whole time, but it sure as hell is there now. And therefore we can bring back in these important spiritual ideas and understand them in a whole new way. And that matters for also one of the big reasons it matters. Well, my pod book's called Why Your Life Really Matters, because if that's not true, then you end up in a universe where it's, you're a clever monkey clinging to a rock in the middle of nowhere for a few decades, long enough to go, what the hell's going on? And then it's over and that's it. Nothing. Now, if that's true, maybe it is. If that's true, then our lives have no significance beyond what we give to them for that short period. But I don't think it is true. I think we're part of something far more, even more amazing than that, something quite extraordinary. And that's what the spiritual vision gives us. And that's why I want to bring it back in, but with a new level of robust intellectual understanding that links it into our scientific understanding without diminishing either.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you kind of another concept that people have on this, and just I wanted your opinion on there. And this is going to gets way overused and way knocked out of perspective. But the entire concept that was brought forward in a movie like The Secret, the power of intention, manifestation ability. I make a board with I draw a Porsche on it because I want a Porsche, and the universe will deliver a Porsche to me is my goal there. For people that are kind of into that sort of train of thought or thinking on it, what are your views on, we'll call it my human mind, my unit of awareness, interacting and being able to manipulate reality, so to speak?
I think it works. I think, but I think we understand, again, like nearly everything that I'm doing, Ryan, is going, I think there's a reality here. We just need to understand it in a whole new way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, it's a big story, but in my life, when I was much, much, much younger, before I was a writer, I was a musician,
Okay.
and the create your own reality movement was just beginning. I mean, it's always been there, but it just taking root in culture. And for various reasons, I was packed off for my own well-being to a center of my friend ran in Spain. And it happened to be one of these newfangled things. And I was absolutely passionate about wanting this beautiful, what was state-of-the-art recording studio at that time, to make an album about the Earth and to do a video. And I had nothing, absolutely nothing. And I did exactly what you described. I focused intensely. I went, what the hell, let's do it. And 2 or 3 weeks after I got back, we were installing the recording studio. We made the film. It was shown at the United Nations. It became second in the BBC Environmental Music Video Awards. From nothing. It just landed in my lap. So there's other examples too. However, done a lot of things that didn't work too.
Yes.
And I think that's the mistake. My favorite example is after that, I had a little bit of a fascination with Van Morrison because his music that time especially was very spiritual. I found it very moving. I thought I'd really like to meet Van. So I'll envision it.
Right.
And he comes to my house, and I was living in a big manor house with a recording studio at the time. And he did. He came to visit somebody else, but I wasn't there. I was on holiday with my parents in Cuba.
And it technically worked. I mean, sort of.
Oh, yeah. I see. So anyway, what I think is happening with all of this, not just that, but also all sorts of other what I call magical narrative experiences. Synchronicity is another example. There's lots of these times when life becomes dreamlike. And I think the key to them, it's a big subject to do in a few minutes, but I think the key is to go, look, the psyche is causal. It's the psyche is causing my mouth to move right now. I'm intending to speak. My mouth moves. I think the psyche is also causal more generally, and that the existence is these different information systems all influencing each other, from physics and biology to the psyche. It's all a vastly complex web of interacting causation, and that our intentions are part of that on a narrative level. So Carl Jung, very famously, working with Pauli, the Nobel Prize winning physicist, when he was working on synchronicity, suggested, look, physical causation is not enough. There's another something happening, what he called an acausal connecting principle. What I suggest is that it's acausal because it's not physically causal, but it is causal. It's narratively causal. That the level of the psyche is stories. That's the stories we have to understand things, which includes intentions, like my intention for the recording studio. Huge numbers of intentions all the time. I intend to make a cup of tea, everything. And then these big intentions. And that all that ecology of psyche is having an effect on the ecology of biology and the ecology of physics. And sometimes it becomes obvious, and you go, "Oh, look!" and a seemingly magical event. Well, it is a magical event. It's being caused by images. It's like a dream. They happen, and you go, "Whoa!" That's not just that's happened, but it's not just biological or physical causality, is it? The mistake that's made, I think, with things like The Secret, or older ideas like karma, which are both attempts to understand this, is they're absolute. So what often is said is that you are creating everything about your life, right, and that your life is feeding back. No, that can't possibly be true. It means everyone in your life is merely a puppet to your intentionality. That's not right. But the opposite, which is like, well, it's nothing, doesn't have to be true either. I think somewhere in the middle is where the reality lies. That our intentionality, our psycho-causality, our narrative causality plays into the other levels of this informational matrices that we exist in. And sometimes it's obvious, and sometimes it has a big effect, and then mostly it doesn't. And the last thing I want to add to that is I think it is also how the super soul, whatever name you want to give that, God, whatever name you like, that benevolent super being has an effect through exactly this. And that's why you have those moments of providence or grace, as they get called, where you go, oh, I'm being guided here, or something wonderful has happened, and I link it to the divine. And it also explains why that doesn't happen all the time, because that is just one more factor in the great causal soup. Right. It's not running the show. It's not like God likes you now and now doesn't give a damn. It's like that power is always there rooting for you. It's just that its causal influence is limited, like everything, within the overall matrice of causality. Did any of that make any sense? I tried to cover it very fast.
Absolutely, especially the part you're talking about, the absolutism. Oh, well, everything is your creation or nothing's your creation. No, it's probably a combination of the both that are going. I don't believe that the 5-year-old whose parents die in a car accident was thinking about hoping they wouldn't die, therefore they did. No, that doesn't make any sense. Nor does it where somebody says, all you need to do is think about something and it'll just happen. No, you have to put hard work into it too. If you want to be a race car driver, you need to go to a race car school and get your driver's license for racing cars. You can't just sit at home and somebody's going to hand you, a Valvoline scholarship. But no, I think that's really important to keep in mind. And that sort of thinking actually can really sort of hurt people too when they're thinking, oh, well, how can I become... Everything I brought is myself. Well, that again, it makes the universe isn't fair. So what's the point of even trying? And it's just this bombardment of the kind of the negative stuff happening,
and health as well, Ryan. I mean, it's one thing. You see, I do think what we're exploring here, I think, is that obviously, I didn't go home and there was a recording studio waiting for me. That didn't happen, and there was no miracles involved. No laws of nature were broken. What happened was that the story of my life went in the direction I wanted it to.
Mhm.
And it went there for things that came to me. I didn't go to it. People came to me and made it happen. And so it was magical, not miraculous. And so it's the direction that things go in. It's like the narrative started to go in that direction. And then, it didn't. And then it keeps moving and changing. That's the key. That's the key. It's not, I've said it, it's magical, not miraculous.
Right.
In that way. And it's and the absolute thing, like you said, with kids, and it's like, obviously it can't be that, but we don't have to jump to the other extreme. And that's what tends to happen, which is to go, well, I heard Richard Dawkins being interviewed the other day, and he's a scientist I admire immensely.
Yeah, very
brilliant
much.
man.
God Delusion is a great book.
Great thinker. He's, just an all-round interesting man. I disagree with him, of course, but I respect him. And someone rather foolishly said to him, this was about death, but it could have been about this, and went, what do you think happens after death? And you could see the look of, oh, look. And he just said, it's just impossible. And I think he would say the same about what I've been claiming about magical events happening. It's just impossible. And what he's saying is, from the ontology, the way I think reality is,
right,
that's impossible.
Exactly.
So then the question is that accurate? Or do you need to change how you're seeing reality such that you go, oh, now it is possible because these things actually happen? So if your ontology is cutting you off from things that are actually real, you need to improve your ontology. And that's what I'm trying to do, is go, can we understand the nature of reality in such a way that we don't dismiss all of these things as woo-woo without being gullible and naive? And there's a shed load of that in spirituality. It's just full of that.
Yes.
But not all of it. There's things in there which are really precious, and we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We want to understand that in a new way, so that we can start studying it. Yeah. What are these near-death experiences? Oh, why do so many people have experience synchronicity? Why does magic sometimes happen and sometimes not? What are those moments where you feel guided? Is it just an illusion? Is it like when you see Jesus's face in a pancake? It's like, no, it's just nonsense.
Right.
Or is it something real? And I think it is something real. And I think we can come to an understanding if we're willing to think creatively.
Fantastic. So we're coming up on the hour here, and I want to give everybody kind of maybe an actionable item here for them to do. So obviously, I think everybody needs to go and listen to the pod book there. But for people that are kind of, this is where they're at philosophically in life, they're trying to answer these questions about existence for themselves. What are some different things people can do, or what are practices maybe or ideas or thoughts they can meditate on that you find maybe would be helpful to them or beneficial?
Oh, great question. There's a few things I'd like to share with everyone before we end. But I think the key thing is to reflect. That you see, how I'm experiencing existence comes from how I ideate it, meaning what categories, what ideas I have. And most of those I picked up unconsciously from my culture. I don't even know what they are. Others I've picked up from books and plugged them in, and to actually start looking, to know yourself, to look at the way in which and to look deeply. So a lot of people look just on the surface, but to look deeply and go, what are my assumptions? One of the things we haven't talked about here, and we won't get into it now, but which people often find of interest, is that this work I'm doing with my pod book has necessitated me saying that all the books before Soul Story were, in a couple of important ways, wrong. I've had to look at my ideas and go, oh, I've invested my life into this idea, but I don't think it's right. In order for my understanding to evolve, I've had to be willing to let go of what I've understood in the past. And in my case, kind of a career, and go, I got to rethink this. But what the payoff is that you're suddenly in a new world. Life is enhanced because I'm understanding it in this radically new way. So I think the ability to question, not everything, you can't question everything, it'd drive you mad, but to spot the things that you're drawn to and go, yeah, is that right? Is that right? And then we live in a time now where you can hear so many different voices, and to seek out those voices which don't agree with you, as well as the voices that do, and find intelligent people saying different things. And I hope that one of those voices might be the voice that I have in Why Your Life Really Matters, the pod book. And what it's designed to do is give an overall philosophy, which I hope you'll find coherent, but also in every chapter, and we've just started weekly to release them, to go, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And my view of truth, the chapter that's, as we speak, about to come out, is on truth. And my take on truth is the etymology is trustworthy. It comes from like a true friend, a trustworthy friend, a false friend, untrustworthy friend. And I think when we say something's true, we mean it's trustworthy. So if I've got some information and it's trustworthy, that's a value to how I live. But what that does is it gets rid of some crazy idea of absolute truth, whatever the hell that could be, or that you've arrived somewhere. I don't know what that could be either. Yeah. But rather you're cooperating with others to find more and more trustworthy ways of ideating this incredible mystery we're in, so that our understanding grows, our experience is enhanced, and we see the value of our lives.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of chapters that are going to be coming into this. Is there anything else before we wrap up just for today? Because I'm hoping you're going to be on in the future as more chapters will come out that we can continue this conversation. That would be fantastic. Is there anything else you want to leave the watchers with for today?
Yes, I'd like to some practical things.
Yeah.
One is we've mentioned a lot, which is lovely, the pod book, which is, it's my life's work really. So check it out. If you do check it out, send me some comments, because it's good to see what you think. Then if you would like to support what I'm doing or connect with me in person and to ask questions directly and be involved, I have an online community. It's very small, very intimate, and it's open-minded, big-hearted explorers of life. We meet on a Sunday night, UK time, and we do practical things to change our experience, and we talk about ideas, and it's beautiful. So if you'd like to see what that's about, on my website, timfreak.com, it's called the International Community of Univigils, which shortens to ICU. And the reason I like ICU is because a lot of the practical side of what I'm doing is about really seeing each other. And that's the last thing I want to add, which is what we do online is spiritual practices. But what I'm doing isn't just ideas or just philosophy. I'm absolutely interested, primarily the heart of it is in transforming our experience profoundly of that awakening and to this enormous love that arises. I call myself a philosopher, Ryan, but really I'm a love junkie. It's just like, It's the love that pulls me in. And so I've run retreats all over the world for 30 years, thousands and thousands of people, and seen them have this experience where they've gone, okay, what is this oneness and big love you talk about? And then poof, oh, wow. And when you get it, oh my goodness, And this year we only have one retreat because I'm so busy with the pod book, but we do have one. And it's in Glastonbury, which is where I live in the UK. And it's going to be small because my attention is elsewhere, but it will be beautiful. And so if there's anyone listening that goes, well, I want to actually experience what this guy's talking about, if you can make your way to Glastonbury in October, then you can become part of something which is definitely magical. You will definitely feel that. I have absolute confidence that you will, because nearly everyone, I want to say everyone, does. And that's in October. And that all the information for that is on timfreak.com.
Beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Tim. I greatly appreciate you coming on. I'm going to have to check that out and see if I can make that actually too here in October.
I would love that so much, Ryan. That would be just great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys, everybody, for joining us today. Tim's going to be on in the future. We're going to continue this conversation, hopefully. Go and check out the pod book and the different information that's going to be listed below. And I wish everybody a wonderful day here. Again, if this is stuff you like, please hit that like button and subscribe. It's how we know we're here, and you'll get to see more of this. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful day, everybody.